If you're just joining us, you're watching Newsnight live from Nigeria's capital, Abuja. Now, joining us to take a look at Nigeria's inflation rate dropping to 15.10% in January 2026. We have Dr. Paul Alaje. He's the chief economist at SPM Professionals. Thank you very much for joining us on Newsnight. Well, the point is, is this what we should we be cheering about these new figures that we're hearing? Because analysts were actually projecting somewhere around 19%. But here we are, a drop from 15.15% to 15.10%. Against the backdrop, Paul Alaje, that Nigerians are still crying over the cost of living.
Yeah, thank you so very much. A beautiful evening to you both for having me. I must say that we have seen the report from the Bureau of Statistics, 15.10%. That is the January official report from the National Bureau of Statistics of what Nigeria inflation is, coming down from 15.15%. The question is, do we really call for celebration, or is this structural or temporary? Well, this is what I would say. This inflation reduction is partly as a result of increase in food supply, according to the report. The report also revealed that there are a number of other factors. We have seen month on month, which is the most interesting number. It has negative growth. And it also shows that, yes, even though inflation is growing at higher rates, the rate of growth is slower compared to what is expected. That is, it's still growing. 15% means increase compared to January 2024. When you compare to January 2025, it's still an increase, but the rate of increase is now slower. Now, when you look at some other interesting parts, you look at rural inflation, you look at urban inflation. Inflation is still very core at urban center. It seems to be moderating more at the rural area. And the Bureau of Statistics is saying that food inflation seems to have improved much better compared to what urban inflation. Food inflation seems to have improved much better more than core inflation. And from the numbers, we can see that, yes, FX might have stabilized, but we cannot completely conclude. And I would also want to advise a monetary authority that please do not sporadically just take decision on rates. It might be premature until we end the what we call the outlier period. The outlier period, in my mind, we end by March, April this year. By that time, we now look at the behavior of inflation. If month on month is still moderating, and if year on year is moderating, because we still have to some extent base year effect. Base year effect will make us look as though our inflation is improving, but claiming the improvement may not reflect in the marketplace. As I speak to you today, prices are still very, very high, even though food prices has reduced compared to what it was in December. One key factor here, when we compare this to December, is that the way people demanded for things, especially food in December, is much lower than the kind of demand that we have now. Of course, when demand reduces and supply remains the same, or even if the supply reduces, that will definitely have implication on prices. So that is what we have seen. That is what moderated this inflation to be 15.10% using the new base year. By this time, April or March, we might not be mentioning base year again because we would have had the full effect of base year. But I must comment that exchange rate seems to have stabilized. We have seen it around 1,340, 1,390, even though the gap between the official and parallel market widened a bit around January to February to about 90 naira. Perhaps that is why Central Bank of Nigeria had decided to reincorporate the BDC back into the system, especially into FX market. I hope that works, because if it does not, we have the implication. Elections are coming. We hope that will be a pipeline for those who want to run election to exchange their money now and perhaps bring them out day before election or on election day. So bottom line here is that, yes, inflation is as reduced by marginal point. I think just about 5 basis points there. That is the reduction, but it's a reduction, and I've mentioned factors that are responsible for it. Please, if you go to the market tomorrow, prices may not be entirely lower as you may expect, because we have base year effect. We also have a number of other effects right there for you.
Well, thank you for putting out the warning to Nigerians who may go to the market and still find that things haven't really changed, Mr. Alaje. But another significant thing was the digits for food inflation being single digit for the first time in many months. I can't even remember last time I saw this single digits for food inflation. But let's talk about the state disparities. I see a lot of southeastern states, recording very, low rates as compared to others in the northern region, not central particularly. What stood out the most for you when it came to state disparities, and are there warnings for the subnationals as well?
Well, I think transports within states take a key role. Also, food supply in some areas. There are a lot of areas in Nigeria where you see that food inflation is expected to be much lower, especially the Middle Belt and the core northern states. Insecurity as major role, then supply chain, it's also a major factor. For areas that has relatively low rates, there are so many other factors, which is insecurity in those areas are relatively lower. Then cost of transportation, FX exposure, market efficiency, urban density, and access to food supply. These are factors that are responsible for disparity you have seen from state to state. Some states where you see them are working. Southeast, I will not be surprised if the number of Enugu is posting is relatively better because of key infrastructure that is going on around there. Some northern states, especially north central, places where our team have visited, they have rehabilitation of road and so on. Some are trying to connect their markets to farms. Some of those states, in spite of the high number that is coming from the north, you will see that those states will still post relatively lower number, because we are not saying Nigerian land have refused to yield harvest for us. No, they have. But logistics, cost of fuel, cost of movement, human cost, middlemen, these are factors that have contributed largely to what we have seen today. So we hope that in the coming period, some of these will be eliminated and government will take key decisions in making this relatively better for people.
And Paul Alaje, before we let you go, inflation is slowing before the first Central Bank of Nigeria meeting in 2026. How exactly do you think these figures that we're seeing will impact the outcome of that meeting or the decisions that will be taken in that meeting?
Well, I will want to put this there. First, Central Bank needs to be extremely careful for if we're taking decision, reducing interest rate. This is what many analysts are clamoring for. This is what many people are saying. Cut the rates, reduce the rates. I want, listen, if truly inflation is 15.10%, how come NPR is over 20%? If you do that, and America increases rate by only 1%, the gains we have made in the last 2 years will be eroded with the speed of light. You have to be very careful and be professional economists. What does that mean? Even though we want to reduce rates, which I support, I'm saying, please, for the sake of the market system that we are following right now and the market template, we need to wait till we are done with the outlier period. Right. That period will end in the next 3 to 4 months. That time, you can bring inflation number down. And that is why I say the inflation number is reducing. It does not call for clapping, jubilation. You can see politicians on social media throwing their fingers, saying, no, the number is coming down. Some are saying, I only hope they know the meaning of outlier. I only hope they know the meaning. So, but when the outlier period are over, we can now look at this is where we are. What can we do at this point? Can we now have numbers that can be managed? Therefore, monetary policy committees meeting, if they must reduce, it must be really very marginal, not more than 100, 150 basis point reduction, if they must. But by the time they are meeting next, we would have seen the full-fledged of what the number is saying. What is most important to them, which I've said, is watch out for month-on-month inflation, plot it over 12 months at the minimum. Then that will help you find the average of the growth rate of monthly increase. That will help you in making decisions. If you make decision out of impulse or pressure, then I can assure you that you will not be having structural improvement. You'll be having momentary or temporal improvement, which of course will come back to us in the coming period. Because that this year has high tendency for inflation.
Right.
Because a lot of us are watching what will change in the trend. Elections are coming. This is when politicians push money into the economy,
Okay.
and those money must be reported.
Yes, Mr. Paul Alaje,
in Naira,
the
and some that
CBN
will come in
governor
that
did
currency,
warn
which of
that
course have
much
been-
about
have rather
election
allowed
spending.
advocacy on to
And-
henceforth in our country.
Thank you, Paul Alaje. That warning also came from the CBN governor Cardoso about the election spending and the
Yeah.
volatility of our economy.